In the heart of occupied Holland, where jackboots echoed through cobblestone streets and swastika flags cast shadows over centuries-old canals, one young woman's fiery red hair became a symbol of defiance that would haunt the Nazi regime until their final days. Her name was Hannie Schaft. To her friends, she was a bright law student with dreams of fighting for human rights. To the Nazis, she was their most wanted terrorist, a ghost with red hair who struck without warning and vanished into the Dutch underground. Our story begins in 1920, in the picturesque city of Haarlem, just 20 kilometers west of Amsterdam. Here, in a world that still believed in the promise of lasting peace, Janet J. Johanna Schaft was born into a middle-class Dutch family. The Schaft household was one marked by both love and loss. When Hannie was just 7 years old, tragedy struck. Her older sister died of diphtheria in 1927. The devastating loss transformed her parents into protective guardians, watching over their surviving daughter with fierce devotion. But Hannie was no ordinary child content to live within protective walls. Even as a teenager, she possessed a razor-sharp political awareness that set her apart from her peers. She would engage adults in heated discussions about society, politics, and justice, displaying an intellectual curiosity that would shape her destiny. Her dream was clear. She wanted to become a lawyer specializing in human rights cases. At 18, she enrolled at the University of Amsterdam, her red hair making her instantly recognizable among the sea of students flooding the campus halls. It was here, among the diverse student body, that Hannie formed deep friendships with Jewish classmates. Their conversations about philosophy, law, and justice opened her eyes to the growing threat of anti-Semitism spreading across Europe like a plague. But while Hannie debated legal theory in Amsterdam lecture halls, darkness was gathering beyond the Dutch borders. Adolf Hitler's war machine was awakening, and the shadow of the swastika was creeping ever closer to the peaceful Netherlands. On May 10, 1940, the illusion of Dutch neutrality shattered like glass. German paratroopers descended from the sky, tanks rolled across the border, and in just 5 days the Netherlands fell to Nazi occupation. The occupation transformed everything Hannie knew. Her university education was cut short as Nazi racial laws infected Dutch institutions. Her Jewish friends faced increasing persecution, and the Holland she loved began to disappear beneath the weight of oppression. For many, this would have been the moment to retreat into silence and survival. But Hannie Schaft was not many people. The injustice she witnessed ignited something deep within her, a flame that would soon grow into an inferno of resistance. When her university life ended abruptly, Hannie made a choice that would seal her fate. She joined a resistance group closely aligned with the Communist Party, a decision that would brand her as both a freedom fighter and, in Nazi eyes, a terrorist. From the beginning, Hannie was different from other resistance recruits. While many were content with distributing underground newspapers or gathering intelligence, she demanded something more dangerous. She wanted weapons training. She wanted to carry out attacks against the German occupiers. But even in her hunger for action, Hannie's moral compass remained unwavering. When her handlers asked her to kidnap the children of Nazi officials, she refused without hesitation. "If I do this," she argued, "innocent children will be killed. That would make us no better than the Nazis themselves." Her first major assignment led her to two remarkable sisters hiding in the Dutch countryside, Truus and Freddie Oversteegen. These three young women, none older than 24, would form one of the most effective resistance cells in occupied Holland. Together, they began their deadly education. They learned to handle revolvers and rifles, to gather intelligence on German defenses, and to move like shadows through occupied territory. Hannie received shooting lessons that would soon prove devastatingly effective. Her transformation from law student to resistance operative was complete, but with it came a terrible price. She was now living on borrowed time, knowing that capture meant certain death. Hannie's first major operation targeted a Dutch police captain who had become notorious for betraying his own countrymen to the Nazi authorities. As he rode past her on his bicycle through the streets of Haarlem, Hannie stepped from the shadows and shot him down in cold blood. But the captain wasn't finished. Even as he lay dying, he managed to fire back, striking Hannie's accomplice. In his final moments, the wounded resistance fighter made a fatal mistake. He revealed several addresses to the enemy, including Hannie's family home. The Nazis now had their first real lead on the mysterious red-haired woman who had been appearing at sabotage sites across Holland. They took Hannie's parents hostage, hoping to force their daughter to surrender. The choice was agonizing: sacrifice herself to save her parents, or continue the fight while they remained in Nazi hands. Hannie chose the resistance. Her parents were eventually released, but the message was clear: the net was closing. Her distinctive red hair, once her pride, had become her greatest liability. In a painful sacrifice, Hannie dyed her beautiful locks black and began wearing glasses to alter her appearance. From this moment forward, she would be known simply as Hannie, a ghost haunting the Nazi occupation. The death of her accomplice only intensified Hannie's commitment to the cause. Working primarily with the Oversteegen sisters, she launched attack after attack against Nazi collaborators. Over the course of her resistance career, she was present in at least 8 assassination attempts, personally carrying out attacks on 3 local police leaders. During one particularly dangerous operation, Hannie was wounded and forced into hiding to recover, but even injury couldn't slow her down. As soon as she was able, she returned to the deadly game of cat and mouse with the Nazi authorities. By 1945, Hannie Schaft had become one of the most wanted women in Holland. The Nazis knew they were hunting a female operative with dyed black hair and glasses, but her true identity remained a mystery. Wanted posters offered substantial rewards for information leading to her capture. March 21st, 1945. The Third Reich was crumbling on all fronts, Allied forces were closing in, and liberation seemed just weeks away. But for Hannie Schaft, time had finally run out. During what should have been a routine movement through Nazi-controlled territory, Hannie was stopped at a checkpoint. The soldiers discovered resistance newspapers hidden on her person, damning evidence of her underground activities. Worse still, they found a loaded pistol. There could be no innocent explanation. Hannie Schaft, the girl with the red hair who had terrorized the Nazi occupation, was finally in their hands. She was transported to a prison in Amsterdam, where the interrogation began immediately. The Nazis were desperate to extract information about her network, her operations, and her accomplices. The torture was brutal and relentless. For weeks, Hannie endured unspeakable suffering at the hands of her captors. Finally, broken by the agony, she made a calculated decision that would save lives even as it sealed her fate. Hannie confessed to carrying out several attacks, but her confession was strategic. By taking responsibility for operations, she secured the release of 5 other women who had been arrested on suspicion of resistance activities. Even in captivity, she was still fighting. The resistance movement tried desperately to buy her freedom, offering substantial ransoms to Nazi officials. Hannie was even told that she wouldn't be executed, that arrangements were being made for her release. But on April 17, 1945, the lie was revealed. Armed guards appeared at Hannie's cell door before dawn. As they dragged her from her prison, her screams echoed through the corridors. She knew exactly what awaited her. She was forced into the back of a car with armed Nazi officials. During the journey back to Haarlem, a Dutch collaborator with a spade joined them, the grave digger who would complete their grim task. The car traveled to the desolate sand dunes near Oversteegen, just outside Haarlem. This wasteland had become an execution ground where hundreds of resistance fighters had already met their end. As Hannie was marched into the dunes, Dutch Nazi official Martin Cooper and his men followed behind her. The 24-year-old woman walked steadily forward, her head held high despite knowing these were her final moments. At close range, collaborator Matthias Schmitz raised his pistol and fired at the back of Hannie's head, but incredibly, the bullet only grazed her skull, failing to kill her instantly. Hannie turned to face her executioners, blood streaming down her face, and spoke her final words that would echo through Dutch history: "I shoot better than you." Another collaborator then opened fire with a machine gun, finally ending the life of Holland's most wanted resistance fighter. The men dug a quick, shallow grave and covered Hannie's body with sand, but their haste betrayed them. They left her distinctive red hair visible above the sand, a final defiant statement from the girl who had terrorized the Nazi regime. Hannie Schaft died just 23 days before Adolf Hitler's suicide and less than a month before the complete liberation of the Netherlands. She was so close to seeing the freedom she had fought and died for. After the war, investigators discovered 422 bodies in the Oversteegen dunes, 421 men and 1 woman. The woman was Hannie Schaft, finally identified by her red hair, which she had dyed black but which had grown out during her final months in captivity. She was reburied with full honors and recognized as a Dutch national hero. Streets, schools, and monuments were named in her memory across the Netherlands. The law student who had dreamed of fighting for human rights had become an eternal symbol of courage against oppression. But Hannie's recognition was not immediate or complete. Because of her communist connections, some aspects of her story were downplayed during the early Cold War 24 years. Only gradually did the full extent of her heroism become widely acknowledged. Today, Hannie Schaft is remembered not just as a resistance fighter, but as a young woman who made an extraordinary moral choice. At an age when most people are just beginning their adult lives, she chose to risk everything for the freedom of others. Her story reminds us that heroes are not born, they are made by the choices they make when faced with evil. In the darkness of Nazi occupation, a girl with red hair chose to light a flame of hope that burns to this day. The girl with the red hair who terrorized Nazis died at just 24 years old, but her legacy lives on in every person who chooses courage over comfort, resistance over collaboration, and hope over despair.